Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The early morning light filtered through the lace curtains of our room, casting a soft, deceptive glow on what used to be my safe haven. I shifted in bed, trying to shake off the restlessness that had settled over me for months. Something gnawed at my insides, a subtle ache I dismissed as fatigue. But today, it was sharper, more insistent. Molly, my wife, lay beside me, her breathing steady and peaceful. The perfect image of serenity. Blonde hair splayed across her pillow, lips slightly parted, she looked like the woman I fell for years ago. I turned away, watching the shadows dance on the wall. Our life together flashed through my mind like a reel, the way we met at that summer party, the whispered confessions in the dark, the vows exchanged under a sky that seemed as boundless as our love. And yet, somewhere in that reel, cracks had started to show, subtle at first, like hairline fractures on porcelain. That morning, as Molly got ready for her day at the accounting firm, I studied her more closely. It wasn't the practiced eye of a suspicious husband, not yet. Just the look of a man who loved his wife but felt something slipping through his fingers. The laughter that used to come easily had become rare, conversations strained. There were the late nights she explained away with work, her phone that she kept close like a prized possession. "Tom, are you listening?" Molly's voice jolted me from my thoughts. She stood in front of me, purse in hand, eyes darting to the clock. "Yeah, of course," I lied, offering her a weak smile. "I said I'll be late tonight. We're going over the quarterly reports, and Nick's team is joining us to sort out some discrepancies," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Nick. The name made my jaw tighten imperceptibly. I knew him in passing from company events, a young, confident newcomer whose easy charm seemed to cut through the air like a blade. I'd noticed how Molly spoke about him, the casual way she dropped his name into conversation, though less and less lately, as if wary of overplaying it. "Okay," I said, letting the silence wrap around us. She hesitated, as if waiting for a question, then nodded, almost relieved, and left. The day dragged by in fits and starts, my mind replaying fragments of conversation, little things that hadn't made sense before. My rational side tried to reason it away, chalk it up to paranoia, stress. But that gnawing feeling from the morning coiled tighter. When evening came, the house was too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of floorboards, my breathing, everything felt magnified. Molly's phone, abandoned on the kitchen counter, buzzed, lighting up the dark surface. Before I could stop myself, I reached for it. I stared at the name glowing on the screen, Nick. The message preview read, "Can't wait for tomorrow." Same place. My fingers curled around the edges of the phone, knuckles whitening. The betrayal felt immediate, physical, as if a hand had reached inside and twisted something vital. I put the phone down, my breathing ragged, and walked out to the backyard to clear my head. The cool night air did little to soothe the fire spreading in my chest. I paced the length of the garden, hands on hips, staring up at the indifferent stars. Memories came unbidden, Molly, eyes wide and earnest as she promised, "I'll always be yours, Tom." The gentle way she'd touch my face, as if memorizing every detail. All those moments now tainted, hollow echoes of what I thought was unbreakable. I could have confronted her right then, stormed into the firm where she claimed to be, or waited for her return and let rage take over. But that part of me, the one screaming for immediate justice, was suppressed by something deeper, a need for certainty, proof. If I was going to burn down everything we'd built, I needed to be sure. The next morning, I was at my desk, searching for answers in the only way I knew how, methodically, logically. Years in IT had trained me to look for patterns, anomalies. My hands moved on autopilot, logging into our shared phone account, cross-referencing numbers. There it was again, that VoIP number with no name, appearing frequently in her call log, always late at night or just before she left the house. Molly came home that day, eyes shadowed, hair a little too perfectly tousled, the scent of someone else's cologne faint but unmistakable. It coiled around me like a taunt. I watched as she moved through the kitchen, talking about her day with that practiced nonchalance. I nodded at the right moments, feeling the chasm between us widen, each lie adding to its depth. "I'll be in late again tomorrow," she said, her voice slipping into that well-rehearsed tone. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. Of course. Work's important. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it bought me the time I needed. Time to uncover the truth that would shatter our carefully curated life. The next day began like 1,000 days before it, with the steady buzz of my alarm breaking the dawn silence. But today, each familiar sound, each habitual motion, felt amplified, tinged with an unspoken dread. I showered and dressed, my mind grinding relentlessly on the findings of the night before. Molly moved about the house with the same grace, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my skin. She left earlier than usual, brushing a kiss across my cheek that felt colder than winter air. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine, and that small, evasive flicker cemented my resolve. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my phone and sat at the kitchen table, fingers poised above the screen. It was time for answers, not assumptions. The call records I had already seen suggested something clandestine, but they lacked context. I scrolled through her recent messages, finding innocuous threads with coworkers and reminders for appointments, but the VoIP number stood out like a beacon. It was anonymous, shielded, like a phantom lurking in the shadows of her phone. There were no messages, she must have been using an app one couldn't access. A grim smile tugged at my lips. It figured. By late morning, I was at my desk, logging into an old account I hadn't touched in years, a service designed for IT professionals to trace IPs and data routes. It wasn't foolproof, but it was something. I input the details and leaned back, a knot of anticipation tightening in my gut as I waited for the results. The reply pinged moments later. The number led to a secondary account linked to a popular messaging app. It was registered under a pseudonym, but the associated email rang a bell. Nick. The same Nick she'd mentioned casually over the past few months, the name I'd heard echoing through the halls at firm events. Suddenly, everything fit. The business trips, the work nights, the hastily hidden phone screens. Fury welled up, raw and unbridled, but I channeled it, pressing down on it like the weight on a coiled spring. There would be time for that later. The day dragged. I worked on autopilot, fielding calls and troubleshooting software problems, my mind elsewhere. Around noon, I messaged an old college friend, Tim, who now worked as a private investigator. Tim had been in the trenches with me during those long study nights, and he owed me more than a few favors. "Hey, Tim. Need a discreet service. Spouse surveillance. Quick turnaround." I added the necessary details and hit send. A couple of minutes later, the typing bubble popped up, and I exhaled. "No problem, Tom. Consider it done. I'll tail her starting tonight. You'll have what you need soon." Relief and dread tangled inside me, knowing that by this time tomorrow, there would be no more ambiguities. When Molly came home that evening, she moved with a strange mix of nervous energy and forced calm. It was in the way she kicked off her heels by the door, the absent brush of her fingers through her hair. I watched her from the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta as if I were just any husband, any ordinary night. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my tone level. She looked up, startled for a fraction of a second. "The usual," she said, too quickly. "Meetings, calls. Nick was there, sorting out those budget issues." "Good to hear," I replied, not looking up. The silence after felt suffocating. Molly fiddled with her phone, her thumb skimming the screen like it was a lifeline. I forced myself to turn away, bile rising as I imagined the words she exchanged with him, hidden behind that glass and plastic. Dinner was strained. Conversation barely limped along, and when she excused herself to shower, I stayed at the table, staring at my untouched plate, every nerve ending on edge. Upstairs, the sound of running water masked my movements as I retrieved my own phone. Tim had already checked in. Following her now. No sign of anything yet, but I'll keep you posted. It was enough. I felt the first prickling of victory, bittersweet as it was. I sat back, crossing my arms, the noise of the water and Molly's faint humming filtering down the stairs. The charade was almost over. The next morning, a new energy coursed through me. Molly left early again, leaving me alone with the hum of the refrigerator and my thoughts. My phone buzzed at 11 a.m. sharp. A message from Tim, got something. Meet tonight. The rest of the day crawled, each minute like an hour. When the clock finally struck 6, I was in my car, driving to a small cafe across town where Tim and I had agreed to meet. The cafe was nearly empty, just the low murmur of an elderly couple by the window and a barista wiping down counters. Tim spotted me and waved me over, his face serious. He slid an envelope across the table when I sat down, the motion subtle, practiced. The man had always been smooth. It's all in there, he said, voice low. Hotel receipts, timestamps, photos. You were right. The words confirmed what I already knew, but hearing them out loud cut deep. I stared at the envelope, the weight of it pressing against my fingertips. Proof. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Tim reached out, a rare show of empathy, and patted my arm. Sorry, man. Let me know if you need anything else. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thanks, Tim. I'll take it from here. On the drive home, I kept the envelope in the passenger seat, glancing at it as if it were alive. In a way, it was. It was the culmination of secrets, lies, the end of the illusion that had been my marriage. I parked in the driveway, turning off the engine and sitting in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat thunder in my ears. Inside, the house was dim. Molly hadn't come home yet, no doubt at one of her meetings. I dropped the envelope on the coffee table and sank into the couch, the silence of the room stretching out like a living thing. I knew that when she walked through the door, the life we had built, the one I believed in, would finally shatter. And I would make sure she felt every splinter of it. The quiet hum of the house enveloped me as I waited for Molly's return. The envelope on the coffee table sat between us like a coiled snake, ready to strike at the first tremor. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, as if it might leap up and scream the truth on its own. The minutes stretched into hours, each tick of the clock gnawing at my patience until it was raw and ragged. The headlights of her car swept across the living room as she pulled into the driveway. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, a war rhythm heralding the end of an era. The front door creaked open, and I heard her heels click against the wooden floor. Tom, she called, her voice wavering slightly. Did she sense it, the shift in the air, the electric tension crackling between the walls? In here, I replied, my voice steady, controlled. She stepped into the room, pausing when she saw me sitting on the couch. The light from the kitchen backlit her frame, casting her shadow long and sharp across the carpet. For a moment, we stared at each other, the silence taut as a wire. Then her eyes darted to the envelope on the table, and I saw a flicker of recognition, of dread. What's that? She asked, forcing a casual tone that didn't quite land. Why don't you take a seat, Molly? I gestured to the armchair across from me. She hesitated, then took a few slow steps, lowering herself with the poise of someone who knows they're being judged. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, eyes never leaving hers. Tom, you're scaring me, she said, trying to maintain an air of confusion, but I saw through it. The mask was slipping, and fear glimmered at the edges. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I pushed the envelope toward her. The motion was slow, deliberate, like offering a weapon in a duel. Open it. She didn't move. Her hands stayed in her lap, fingers twisting nervously. What is this? She asked again, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Proof, I said, leaning back and crossing my arms. The word hung between us, heavy and damning. Of everything. A shadow crossed her face, and the color drained from her cheeks. Molly reached out, her hand trembling as she picked up the envelope. She slid the contents onto her lap, grainy photos of her entering a hotel, timestamps aligned with the calls from that VoIP number, receipts with her signature scribbled at the bottom. Each piece, a shard of betrayal laid bare. I can explain, she whispered, eyes darting from the papers to my face, searching for a crack in my resolve. But I held steady, my expression stone. Go ahead, I said, the edge in my voice sharper than I intended. Explain to me how these work trips were just that, or how Nick's name ended up on hotel registries next to yours. I'm listening. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she crumpled the papers in her hands. She looked up, desperation clawing at her expression. I was lonely, Tom. You were always so distant. Work, the projects, it felt like I was invisible. And he noticed me. A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. So this is my fault. I drove you to betray me, to lie, over and over. No, her voice cracked, and she reached out as if to touch my hand, but I flinched away, the movement sharper than intended. Her hand fell, and her eyes brimmed with fresh pain. I'm not excusing it. I'm just trying to make you understand. Understand? I repeated, the word an echo of disbelief. I stood abruptly, pacing the room as the walls seemed to close in. I gave you everything, Molly. Everything. And you threw it away for what? Some excitement. Validation from a man who'll never care for you like I did. The silence that followed was suffocating. Molly wiped her tears with the back of her hand, drawing a shaky breath. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't affect us. Well, you thought wrong, I said, voice low and final. I turned to face her, the weight of the moment pressing down like a vice. It's over, Molly. I can't do this. I won't. Her sobs came then, deep and guttural, the kind that shake a person to their core. But I felt numb, as if I were watching a scene play out behind a glass wall. She stood, taking a few faltering steps toward me, eyes wide and pleading. Please, Tom. We can work through this. I'll do anything. Therapy, whatever you need. Just, please don't end us. The memory of Tim's voice, low and apologetic, flashed through my mind. You were right. I swallowed hard, fighting against the raw ache that threatened to break through. But I held my ground. I've already given you my answer, I said, turning away from her. Start packing your things. The finality of those words seemed to sap the strength from her. She sank back into the chair, sobs muffled by her hands as I walked out of the room. Upstairs, the faint scent of her perfume lingered, mingling with the echoes of laughter and late-night talks we once shared. But now, it was just a reminder of the life that was already slipping through my fingers. I closed the bedroom door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor until the shadows blurred. The silence that followed was thick and absolute, a prelude to the new, fractured world I would face alone. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream where everything familiar was distorted by a veil of emptiness. Molly packed her things with an air of detachment, her eyes red-rimmed and distant. She stayed silent as she filled suitcases and boxes with pieces of our shared life, now marked by the silence of betrayal. The night she left, rain pelted the windows in steady sheets, as if the sky itself were mourning. I stood in the doorway, watching as she loaded the last of her bags into her car. She paused before closing the trunk, turning to look at me one last time, a silhouette in the storm. Tom. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely cutting through the roar of the downpour. I didn't respond, just nodded curtly. Words felt pointless now. With a final, tear-streaked glance, she got into the car and drove away, the red taillights glowing through the rain until they vanished. Inside, the house felt cavernous, hollow. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty space across from me where Molly once sat, chatting about her day or laughing at some story. The silence pressed down, stifling, and I struggled to take a deep breath. It should have been a relief, vindication. But instead, it felt like a hollow victory, one that left me lonelier than I'd ever imagined. Days turned into weeks, and life moved forward in fits and starts. I buried myself in work, answering emails and fixing code with a mechanical efficiency. It helped to keep busy, to pretend that the life I knew hadn't imploded. Friends called, some even stopped by, but their words of comfort bounced off me like rain against a windowpane. It was a Tuesday evening when the unexpected happened. I was sifting through old files on my laptop, deleting years' worth of clutter, when I stumbled on a folder labeled M&M Memories. The title hit me like a punch to the gut. Molly and Me. I hesitated, fingers trembling, before double-clicking it. Photos filled the screen, moments frozen in time, our honeymoon in Bali, Christmas mornings with silly pajamas, candid shots of us laughing, carefree and in love. I clicked on a video, and Molly's voice came alive in the quiet room. "Come on, Tom, look at the camera." Her laugh, warm and genuine, followed. I stared at my younger self on the screen, grinning wide, eyes lit with the kind of happiness that felt foreign now. The ache in my chest became unbearable, and I closed the laptop with a snap, pushing it away. The phone rang, cutting through the silence. I grabbed it, grateful for the distraction, but my heart sank when I saw the name, Molly's mother. I hadn't spoken to her family since Molly left. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something urged me to answer. "Hello." There was a pause, then her mother's voice, tight and strained. "Tom. I didn't want you to hear it from anyone else. It's Molly. She was in an accident." The world seemed to tilt, my vision narrowing as her words registered. "What?" I managed, my voice hoarse. "She's in the hospital. It's bad, Tom. They don't think she'll make it through the night." I didn't remember getting into my car or driving the rain-slicked streets to the hospital. All I knew was that I had to see her, to somehow make sense of what was happening. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room were harsh, sterile. Molly's mother met me there, eyes swollen with grief. She pulled me into an embrace, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something break inside me. "She's in room 312, she whispered, voice quaking. I nodded, unable to speak, and pushed through the heavy double doors. Molly lay on the bed, tubes and wires snaking around her frail body. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, but she was there, breathing, alive, if only barely. I sank into the chair by her side, my hands gripping the cold metal frame. "I'm here," I said, voice barely audible. My vision blurred with tears as I reached for her hand. It was cold, so different from the warmth I remembered. Memories surged, lazy Sunday mornings tangled in bed, the way she'd squeeze my hand during movies, the light in her eyes when she laughed. Suddenly, her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment, they opened, hazy and unfocused. But they found me, and recognition sparked. A weak, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "Tom," she whispered, the sound cracking in the quiet room. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I nodded, unable to form words. "I'm so sorry," she said, each syllable a struggle. I never meant to lose you." The monitor's beeps grew slower, more erratic. Panic surged, but I forced myself to stay calm, to be there in this moment that might be our last. I squeezed her hand gently, leaning closer. "I'm here, Molly. I'm here." Her eyes searched mine, and for the briefest moment, the weight of everything unsaid, all the pain and love and regret, passed between us. Then the beeping stopped, replaced by a flat, endless tone. The room plunged into silence, a silence so profound that it swallowed the world. I sat there, hand still holding hers, as the nurse came in, silencing the machine and placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Time stretched, splintering into a million shards that cut deep. All that remained was the soft echo of her voice in my mind, and the cold, empty space where my heart had been.